The Gina and Matty podcast.
Tim Lester, who is our Channel 7's US correspondent, is on ground in the States at the moment. The big news overnight is that Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States in what could only be described as a bit of a bloodbath in the election. Good morning, Tim.
Morning.
Mate, wow. They were saying it was going to
right.
be, they were saying it was going to be close, and it's anything but that. If we're looking at I suppose the amount of the electoral college votes that Trump has got this morning compared to Kamala Harris.
Yes, in fact, we've long harped on those 7 battleground states among the 50 states where really the election was going to be decided. Well, Donald Trump has already won 5. 2, the counting is going on, but he's ahead in both. He'll probably win all 7 of the battleground states in what has turned out to be a comfortable win. And yet again, you pointed to the polling, yet again, for the 3rd time, we've seen Donald Trump go to a presidential election and basically outperform the pollsters quite significantly. He's done it again.
You've spent quite a bit of time in the States, Tim. You do a fantastic job on Channel 7. We've seen all your reports throughout the last few weeks following around the rallies and stuff. Did this even surprise you?
Well, the pollsters here know that they get it wrong. And one of them, interestingly, had said, I can't tell you who's going to win this election, but I can tell you it'll probably be pretty comfortable. And the winner will probably win 6 or 7 of the 7 battleground states. So they know that in this environment it's very difficult to measure exactly down to the last decimal point where the election's going to land, partly because Americans, unlike Australians, don't have to vote in an election. It's not compulsory. So many don't, and you're never quite sure not only how people are going to vote, but whether they're even going to turn up. So it's a bit of a moving target. And sure enough, Donald Trump, right across America, has picked up this move to the right, and it's swept him back into the White House.
Wow. Tim, what's the feeling like on the ground in the US for the Harris supporters? Because, we're seeing a lot of famous people tweeting, their feelings. What's it like to actually be there? Is it? I guess it must feel weird, and it would have felt the opposite way if Trump hadn't got in. There could have been, I guess, rioting and stuff. But are people devastated, or what's the feeling?
Well, I think the striking thing for an Australian here is the way that politics is so sharply divided. You really are pretty well overwhelmingly in one camp or another, and both camps look at one another and they can't work out how people on the other side think. So you either think Trump's such a great guy, withstood attacks from the gunman and has stood up bravely, and or you think the man's a fool, he's a thug, he speaks derogatory, has a terrible record with women. You go starkly to one side or the other. In Australia, we have a bit of that left-right divide, but it's not nearly as sharp, and typically Australians can wave off a person with an opposite political point of view fairly easily. Not so here.
No, it's almost like it's a sport and there's 2 sporting teams. There's no nuance, and the media, especially the US media, is like you're either on this team or you're on that team, and there's absolutely no nuance involved whatsoever. What does this kind of mean for us here in Australia, Tim, with Donald Trump going back into the White House? Does it affect our stock market? Does it change the controversial AUKUS deal that was done with the submarines? How is this all going to play out for us here in Australia?
Well, fascinating. Likely it will influence us because he is such a different politician, and in many ways confrontational. So it will affect us. Probably, though, Donald Trump will generally have a pretty positive view of Australia. We haven't seen signs to think he'll single us out for any reason. But when change is coming, change can be negative, even if Donald Trump doesn't have any ill will towards us. His tariff policy is going to be far-reaching. We rely on trade to such an extent in our country. If you go shifting that in major ways, in global ways, you can hurt us. So that would worry us. AUKUS, he may well stick with, though it's an interesting question. But where do we sit on him stopping the Ukraine war and essentially giving Russia a help there? Maybe in the short term, nowhere. But that changes power politics for Russia and China, and that really matters to Australia. So all of those big moves could be in play, and they affect us.
Absolutely. So what happens next now? So we're waiting for Vice President Harris to concede. We're waiting to see that speech. And then I guess, so is Joe Biden stays president until the beginning of next year?
January 20th is the date on which the official, on which Donald Trump will be inaugurated.
Okay.
January 20th is a set calendar day. So there is still 2.5 months of a Biden presidency to go, very much a lame duck presidency in many respects, because he wasn't even essentially the leading figure in his own party. But that's the 21st, things get hectic.
What about for you, Tim? What's your schedule looking like at the moment? What are your movements like? You've been very busy. Do you get to stay in one spot for a while, or are you going to be on the bus rolling around the States?
Between you and I, don't tell the boss, but it's a bad time to apply for Christmas holidays.
Tim, well, good luck, mate. I hope you get that leave approved. And if not, we will see all of your reports from the States on 7 News throughout the day. Mate, you're doing a great job, and don't be a stranger to the show. If anything happens, please let us know.
Good chatting.
The Gina and Matty Podcast.
For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcast.com.au.